Deb Cooper with the Canine Chronicle, bringing you Table Talk with Terry James, who is just coming off of a pretty long week, I would say, huh, Terry?
It was a good week, but yes, ma'am, it was a long one.
Well, on behalf of not just the Chronicle, but the entire Fancy, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of the hard work and perseverance that you had in making that cluster happen. I mean, you're the man behind the show. I know you never want kudos, but I'm going to give them to you anyway, because I know you weren't stopping till this got done, and you got it done. And not only did you get it done, but you got it done with a smile on your face and compassion in your heart. So thank you so much for that. And I thought that it would be a great opportunity to do a little bit of a download, if you will. So I'm going to ask you first to please give us your top takeaways from this past week, from organizing the show to executing the show.
Well, first of all, so thankful to John McDonald here in our office. This whole spark, this whole event was based on him saying, look, we need to explore this idea, because the sport is just on a bottom level. We at Onofrio are at a bottom level. We've been able to keep our doors open up until now, but things are hurting. So John made the spark. He and I saw Tim James, and off we went. We have to thank the American Kennel Club for helping so much in getting approvals done. Once the clubs applied, and we were able to get this rolling. Lazy E Arena, rock star people at that particular facility. They're used to doing horse events, but it's been well over 15 years. It could be even longer since a dog show has been there. And we had 2 different events there long ago and moved on. The clubs decided at that point that it was easier to be at a different site in Oklahoma City proper. But all that being said, we learned a lot. The judges, the volunteer ring stewards, we had judges' spouses here helping. Professional handlers could not have been better at this event. There's always somebody around to help, but en masse, we had more help than we could use in starting this show. Once we got there, we had handlers helping hand out armbands. Early in the morning, they would show up when they probably should be getting dogs ready. We had the pros sitting there helping out, hand out the armbands. We had people doing whatever it took. And the major shout out I have is to the Southern Handlers Charity League, who without them, this event would have been so much harder for us to pull off. They coordinated so many things, gathered up volunteers, put up signs, took care of the parking, helped police the grooming area to make sure it was kept clean, even helped with the masking situation to remind people to pull those masks up and be proper. We had a fabulous event with great compliance from people that probably don't wear masks at home because they haven't been going anywhere since there's been no work for them, with the number of shows that have had to be canceled due to the pandemic. So we feel so blessed through this whole thing that we had people pitch in from all areas of the country. We had people from the West Coast and the East Coast here showing dogs, people from the South and the North, all here together. And we had no real difficulty at all with these events. The judges were standouts because we asked them to operate the rings in different ways than they ever have before. And we had compliance with that because we were trying entrance and exits. And then 2 days in, we switched it around a little bit to make it better, to help the stewards out. It was a success. The judges rolled with all the punches, stayed on time. In fact, some ran a little ahead of time. And it was just a success from front to end.
Absolutely. So I know that you changed your policy. Originally, you were going to require masks on premise all day Saturday, and just while doing exams Sunday through Tuesday. And then at some point on Saturday, you changed the policy to require masks to be worn on premise for the entire cluster. Why did you do that?
With the changing conditions here in Oklahoma and across the country, but mainly we were worried about here in Oklahoma, we wanted everybody to feel safer and be safer. So it was best for everybody's comfort level to go ahead and require the masks, except when they were moving the dogs in the ring, masks were required. And I will say that even with that being said, 90% of the people moving their dogs in the ring also had masks on because they were starting to get used to the idea. It wasn't such a burden on them. And like I say, the compliance was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
The other thing that I thought would be helpful for people to understand is, we've chatted about this before. In most premium lists, it states that Facebook live streaming or videoing is not allowed. Under normal circumstances, pre-COVID, if you will, for the most part, that's kind of relaxed a bit unless there's a complaint or there's a problem. It was taken very, very seriously at the cluster. I know some were unhappy because, those of us that were at home that couldn't be there just wanted to see what was going on. However, we're also trying to get something done here and trying to save our sport. So why was that so strictly enforced?
Well, it became a person that was helping us as show committee felt that it was difficult because of some of the negative that was coming from Facebook and other social media, trying to keep down the amount of difficulty because people were going to center on one person who was having trouble keeping their mask up. And yes, the person could have done a better job. Yes, the person could have had a different mask. But there was some effort from what I'm understanding, because I was not part of that move nor the enforcement. It is an American Kennel Club rule in the premium list. It is placed in every premium list that all rights to publicize the event they rest with the American Kennel Club. And so with that being said, we didn't want to go so far, but it went there, and so it had to be enforced. And it's kind of a ticklish situation because superintendents do not enforce that. Mm-hmm. Kennel Club members do not enforce that, so to speak, but they can talk with the AKC rep. They can let AKC know there's a problem. And it's just a very odd, hard situation. So there's a lot of back and forth on it that's difficult. And there are some folks that took it really hard that they could not freely go ahead and live stream or record and then stream it later. And that's, well above my pay grade as a superintendent. It does come from the American Kennel Club themselves. And so it is enforced sometimes by complaint.
And what I did, in this week's table talk was I tried to remind people of the work that went into the cluster and to tell them that basically what you guys were doing was protecting everyone because you were trying to protect the sport so it's viewed in the most positive light, right?
Well, that is something that we were trying to maintain, mm-hmm. because there were a few negative things by people who always intend well, but they catch a person while they're carrying something and the mask is slipped down below their nose while they've got their arms full. So that would be the picture that gets on to Facebook, and somebody starts a string of comments, see, they're not enforcing. And they don't show the stuff in the man's arms. They don't see that he pulled the mask up when he put the stuff down. There were 2 or 3 different items that happened over the week that people can't help themselves. They become negative about it. And we do want to protect as best we can, because if this is all publicized in a positive light as best it can be,
right,
it's going to make people more comfortable to come back to shows. Now, if we didn't enforce masks, if people saw that social distancing was not enforced, they have every right on their own Facebook or on somebody else's to say what they wish. That's the American way. But because we work so hard to make this go in the right logical manner, yeah, there were some folks allied with us that were trying their best to make sure things were in a positive light. And it kind of rolled. And it was just one of those things. And like I say, I wasn't part of all that, but it just went.
Good. Well, I mean, in an overall sense, people were hearing what was happening, so they could, be part of it. And again, you've got to do what you've got to do. So, having the foresight to change the mask rule mid-show, and then, keep an eye on how things were being viewed outside is part of the reason why the cluster was so successful. So there you go again. Attaboy and great job. So if you had recommendations to make to the fancy as a whole to get to decide whether or not to cancel a show, B, how they would make it happen like you did, and takeaways that you have to suggest to people to make it successful, what would it be?
Well, first of all, if it's so much of it is state and local statutes. If the state and local statute is not conducive to having a show, it is what it is. There should be no shaming, no trouble for those clubs that are unable to have their shows because of what is almost rightfully being done by the governors or the counties due to the amount of virus in that area. The kennel clubs are kind of the last in the series of a train. They're at the way back of the bus for being important in the eyes of local authorities. So these were recreational sporting situations may not be able to have shows because they're not considered essential, is the words I really should use.
Right.
No one should give those clubs grief, but there are places that are loosening up where the virus is not as prevalent. There are states that are 60% open. There are states that are 90% open. And those are the states where clubs could, if they can find the volunteer help that could have their events to help our sport prosper and in some cases just survive.
Yeah.
So if a club in Indiana, if a club in Wisconsin, obviously clubs here in Oklahoma, if they need help, they should reach out for help. By hopefully early next week at the latest, we're going to have a montage of pictures and video and some verbiage from judges, from those of us that were there, and hopefully comprehensive enough where clubs can look at it and see just how they can do this, because it really can be done. And it will help move these clubs, this industry, the sport forward, and it'll get our country moving in the correct direction to right itself and economically move forward, along with being safe, because that cannot be said enough. wearing the masks, sanitizing your hands, washing your hands, self-distancing, all of those things are still important. And we're not trying to say those situations should not be done and we should just have dog shows like the old. People should be safe. But those of us that want to work and those of us that want to show dogs should have the opportunity, but do it safely can be done. We proved it. And I really believe that every club can do it if they can. If their state and local government lets them, they can get volunteers. Southern Antlers Charity League is a great place to start. And there's other groups on Facebook. The one
Tabitha Bettis has she has a little, I think it's called The Show Must Go On.
Yes,
yep.
Tabitha, she was here. She was a rock star as well, trying to help and do. The help can be found. Questions about how things were done, we'll entertain them, even if we're not the club superintendent. Mm-hmm. We need the sport to move forward. Mm-hmm. So I am more than happy to answer questions about what we know. Obviously, we don't know it all because that's why we did the learning cluster.
Right.
But we'll have every way we can to see any show go forward, because it's in the end going to be good for everyone, including us, to see more clubs get confident that they can hold an event.
And I think the fact that this one actually happened 4 days, without, major trouble. And hopefully clubs that are now trying to make that overwhelming decision of can we or can't we, they now see all of the people that really will reach out to help. And hopefully, at least before they throw in the towel, they'll call someone like yourself and say, how did you do it? And maybe get some ideas so they will feel more confident in making it happen.
Yeah, and the people who are somewhat compromised, whether by health or by age, they definitely should take care of themselves. Sure. But then have a younger person fill in for them at the show itself.
Right.
And there are, like I said, volunteers available. We had people volunteering to ring steward from very far away. Mm-hmm. They wanted to learn what we were going to do. Mm-hmm. So we had a ring steward drive in from New Mexico, drove in 10 hours just to steward, and then gain knowledge to take back towards the West,
right,
how the stewarding could happen during these pandemic times. There are ways to make it work, ways to move the dog shows forward.
Great. One last question. Moving on to a show that unfortunately didn't quite make it as a result of, numbers spiking and other things. But, yep, unfortunately, there are still people that have some angst over refunds for that are being canceled. San Antonio is now one that is canceled, and people are up in arms. And since that is your show from a superintendent perspective, I thought maybe it would help them and you from a phone call perspective to kind of communicate where you guys are on that and how those decisions are made and why we need to be patient and not expect refunds.
Well, the club, number one, the two clubs, Victoria and Bexar County, this is their money. So when the show closes and it has to be canceled, in this case, local authorities canceled their show for them right there on the grounds. They said you can't be here because of changes in the virus and the things that were going to go on in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. So the club did yeoman's duty in looking for another site, and they went to the obvious sites first that were all being used, because Texas being one of the more open states, there's a lot of action in the different fairgrounds, the different venues. They then found a venue that was relatively close to San Antonio, they tried. They sent the stuff to me to look at. I tried to make it work. And the venue simply was not big enough to hold the 1,200 dog because they also limited theirs to 12.
Right.
They were left with no choice but to throw in the towel. There was not a place to hold the show. You can't go outside in July in San Antonio, Texas to hold an event. So that being said, the cancellation took place.
Yeah.
But after that, the club has to ascertain all of their expenses. It is not an instant we are going to or we're not going to refund. They have to look at their judges' travel, because sometimes, depending on the contract they use, they still have to take care of judges' travel. They still have to pay the superintendent, no matter what superintendent it is, because we've already done the major portion of work on the event. So us trying to keep our doors open, like any business, we have no choice because we are a business. We're not part of the hobbyists. We have costs that are given to the club. The buildings, everything that the club has in expenses, they have to figure out on their own whether they can afford to give back a penny, a dollar, $10, whatever, all the way up the whole fee. It's all in their basket to take care of because of their comfort level. And when you enter a show, in every single premium list, it talks about a show that can't go on and that the fees are up to the club. So it's just like it here. And these clubs take this very seriously, and they're getting, I happen to know that they are getting their expense ducks in a row, and they're going to make some sort of a decision, I hope soon, because our own customer service blows up with people demanding refunds. And we can't do anything until the clubs tell us what they want done. Right. So I feel for it, because we were really hoping to do San Antonio so soon after this one, to give two weekends under the belts, because it would make clubs feel more confident. It just wasn't pulled off.
Wasn't in the cards.
Nope.
So in summary, I think if everyone would please be patient. These guys worked so hard to get this last show going, and calling and yelling at them doesn't really help. So let's be patient, and everybody's doing what they can to determine if refunds are going to be made. And in these pandemic times, when you enter a dog show, keep that in the back of your mind. Don't send any money that you can't afford to not get back, I guess is
there you go.
One way to put it. So Terry, get some rest. Thank you so much again for everything that you did, and for then spending time with us today, because I think it's immensely helpful. I look forward to seeing you soon. And once again, just want to give my appreciation to you and everyone involved for a job stupendously done. Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.
Guys, we'll see you soon. Until next time.